Turn your head and cough. Oh, and we're back. The topic today is another hot button in some of our classes and our user group. We even have it in a quiz question. We like to play quizzes in our classes using a tool called Kahoot. And one of the big ones that leaves people a little stupefied is the fact that there's no carryover in Scrum. There's no carryover. There's no carryover in Scrum. What do you say to that, Christian?
Well, true. There is no carryover in Scrum. The question that we ask is, what do you do with stuff that's not done, right? And
goes back to the backlog.
Goes back to the product backlog, because the stuff that did get done may become the reason for not doing the stuff that's partially done. But if there is carryover, then it means we need to look at why is there carryover. Are we not understanding what we are able to do? Are we overcommitting? Are we missing things? But that's a sign that we need to look. The system is telling you something. The Scrum framework, the system thinking of that is, we are not getting better at figuring out what we can do, the predictable delivery we're after.
In our last conversation, we talked about being naive Scrum Masters or not knowing what we don't know, and it's not understanding empiricism. And I can't say that when I was a new Scrum Master, I understood empiricism, because I didn't. I was a card-carrying project manager, and I had a big old waterfall hangover. And empiricism, transparency, inspect, adapt. Transparency, inspect, adapt. Adapt, adapt, adapt.
Yep.
Okay, so here I've been working as a card-carrying project manager for years. How do we feel about change in project management?
You need to put in a change request.
Change control. I always say the person who came up with the phrase change control has no children.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Control is a facade.
You can't control change.
No.
So, but we've been working in a way that conditions us to discourage change. So maybe I was slow to learn, and that might be part of it. But the other part of it is I was conditioned to not change. Big fat waterfall hangover. So when you see carryover, big red flag that empiricism isn't being understood. You pointed out the systems thinking aspect of that, and that's not the framework failing. That's the framework doing its job.
Yep.
We're ignoring it.
Yep.
So if you want to break it down, and this is what I try to do with new Scrum Masters, it's like, because there's a tendency to say, well, we overcommitted. Maybe, maybe not. We don't know that. Mm-hmm. Because had we, at sprint planning, used data, so transparency, inspect, adapt, transparency, what did we deliver in our last sprint or our last X number of sprints? Inspection. Okay, so based on that, hey, does anybody have any days off or doctor appointments or what that's going to impede our ability to do work? Adaptation. Then we start loading up the sprint goal. So the sprint planning is a transparency, inspect, adapt mechanism on the sprint goal. So now we got this sprint goal. So let's talk about Scrum. Is Scrum based on an individual sport or a team sport?
It's team-based.
Team sport.
Yep.
Now I hear my 8-year-old's voice in my head. It's just working together.
It's just working together,
It's
Mom.
just working together. So it's not, every person takes one story. Everybody, cherry picks through the PBIs on tasks they want to do. It's working together in a rugby-like approach on that first thing. So maybe that's getting blown off. So there's 2 or 3 things that just completely got missed. And then the daily Scrum.
You mean the daily status report?
No. You mean the stand-up? Oh, God. Are you really standing?
Yeah, that's always fears. Like, there's somebody comes back from a class going, we really don't have to stand up. I learned in class that it's not called to stand up. You can just call it Scrum.
Well, I love to point out to people, it says that the developers conduct their own daily Scrum. And so if you're telling them they have to stand, are you empowering them or disempowering them?
Exactly.
You're totally disempowering them. So you're being that dictator Scrum Master, which is not, you don't even conduct it. They do. So back to the daily Scrum, which is not a status report. That was Christian being sarcastic, which is a service he provides. It's a transparency, inspect, adapt mechanism on the sprint goal.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that in the new Scrum Guide, they threw out the 3 questions because we don't really care. As long as you're talking about the sprint goal.
Right.
Don't want to hear your life story. Don't want to hear what you had for lunch. You on track for the goal? Are we not on track for the goal? So let's break that down. Let's say it's a 10-day sprint. So you have 10 of those. 10, am I on track or am I not on track? That got completely blown off if you have carryover, because you would have had a daily opportunity to go, you know what? I'm not on track. What do you need?
We got to talk. We got to figure something out.
Yeah, because we can get you whatever you need to get back on track, or maybe we can talk to the product owner and adapt the goal if it's really that serious. We have all these opportunities to adapt.
I say, did we learn anything yesterday that makes us rethink today? If what we learned from yesterday, are we in alignment with what we have left to do and the time we have left to do it, or are we worried about that? And if it's off, if we're not matching up, if we're not feeling like we're on track, then it becomes, okay, let's talk. Who do we need to talk to? Product owner, stakeholder, what do we do?
Well, and if you're keeping track, I've already rattled off about 6 or 7 things that the Scrum Master is missing to prevent being in this situation again. And I'm not even done.
I had a team that they missed their first sprint goal, and it was just a hangover that, we have to do more in the next sprint because we didn't meet our first sprint goal.
No, you don't.
So they never felt like they were getting anywhere because they were always overloading themselves. And it's like, again, young, dumb Scrum Masters, like, we've never not delivered more than X amount of these points. Why are we extending ourselves by 20? Well, because we didn't make it to the last time. No. It goes back to the backlog, product owner's decision. It's really getting into this, and I don't even say high-performing team anymore. I just want a performing team, a team that gets really good knowing if we bring 6 or 7 or we bring in 10 or whatever we bring in, we get done. That's what you want, because that gets us to predictable delivery. That opens the door for product owners and stakeholders to have better expectation management of, okay, here's this team, here's the stack of work. With predictable delivery, we can come up with a number of sprints fairly close.
Yeah, just stop with a high-performing team, because high-performing teams don't even talk like that.
No, they don't. And
high-performing organizations don't talk like that.
They just go. They just talk.
It's like, we're a high-performing company. Whatever. Okay, so sprint review. Here's another transparency, inspect, and adaptation mechanism that's getting blown off if you have carryover. Because based on stakeholder input and feedback, it's right there in the Scrum Guide. It drives what we do next. And if we didn't have anything to show, first attempt in learning, to your point, what did we learn?
Yep.
What did we learn, and what are we going to adapt based on this? And that's all with stakeholder, that's transparency. Now we get behind closed door to the retrospective, which is safe place to talk, Scrum team, product owner, Scrum Master, developers.
You mean my functional manager doesn't come?
No, they do not.
Okay.
This is where Scrum Master has to be the bouncer.
Yep.
And what I've loved pointing out to Scrum Masters with the virtual work world in COVID times, you can boot somebody out of a virtual meeting. There's the remove participant feature.
Sorry, got a bad connection here. We have to drop you.
And I said, you've got plausible deniability. It's like, oh, something must have happened with the Wi-Fi. So now we've got the retrospective, root cause analysis on what in our process, because it's like Groundhog Day, which it is today, oh, by the way, but it's not like, hey, we're in this position every single sprint. Well, then stop it. What in your retrospective are you not talking about root cause analysis? One, no more than 2 things we're immediately going to try so that we're not in this position again. So then now let's talk about the product owner. Remember I said I wasn't even done. I got more.
Keep going. You're on a roll.
Because now I hear this
Keep
client
recording.
of mine, I hear their voice in my head, and they are one of my favorites, and they are near and dear to my heart, and they have come so far. They slip into the carryover thing, and I just go, oh, and then one of them's like, why does that upset you so much? Why does that, and I'm like, because as proud as I am of what you've accomplished, this is one area where you could do even better and you don't see it. And that's why I'm sad for you.
Yeah.
Because if the product owner understood empiricism, transparency, inspect, adaptation, he or she is constantly refining the product backlog. So the minute he or she has a data point or a couple of data points about what is capable in a sprint, they would be proactively breaking down, proactively splitting, And now we're sizing the new resulting items on their own merits because refinement is ongoing. But this splitting after the fact is just a bunch of crap.
You mean they want to split the story or split the PBI?
We want
mid-sprint?
credit.
Yeah, that's the utilization hangover. That's time spent versus this is all based on value delivery. You either deliver value, you don't. You collect the points if the value is delivered. And if you do that, you inflate your historical data, formerly known as velocity, which we no longer use anymore because everybody used it wrong. We still track it, but it's called historical data, or your better half says miles per gallon.
Well, and the Scrum Master as coach is degenerating into adult daycare provider.
Yeah.
And they're not doing their job again, because when a development team or developers are saying, well, we want credit, I'm always like, what are you going to do with these credits? Is it like Chuck E. Cheese?
Yeah.
You save them up and turn in a prize?
Yeah.
All you're doing is hurting yourself and hurting the product owner's ability to build a forecast. So stop it.
Because the forecast gets inflated by the wrong miles per gallon.
Right.
And then you get into the same old thing we always had, way off, and then you got to have that crappy meeting of we're not going to make it, and it's usually too late. Versus learning quicker with actual data, realistic data, and see quicker versus later that we're either on track or we're not. Adapt.
And so they're ignoring that. So now we've got our product owner, not understanding empiricism and not proactively refining the backlog. And back at the next sprint planning, it's not just schlep over, carry over what wasn't done. I always tell product owners, according to the guide, the entire organization respects your decisions. It is not inmates running the asylum.
Right.
They don't get to decide what gets pulled into the next sprint. And I think product owners could remind development team members, no, it's unfortunate that you didn't give me any transparency for 10 days last sprint. It's unfortunate you didn't say anything at either the review or the retrospective, but something else is important right now. Suck it up, buttercup.
Yeah.
So all of those things that we've mentioned since this started are being completely missed by the Scrum Master. Oh, wait. And then if there's an Agile coach on top of the Scrum Master, we're paying twice the price for people to not do the bare minimum of the job.
Yep.
So that's why there's no carryover. There's no carryover.
And if the product owner is ordering the backlog, the dev team picks the top priority. They pull what's at the top end until they fill it. So that product owner can find out the stuff you're doing isn't lining up with what I want for value. And they can jettison that product backlog and start putting other stuff in to try different things. It's just the dev team picks to their capacity. What the order is, sorry, I'm going to have to throw that one out. I was just saying that they do pick, but the order is based on product owner.
Well, they had the conversation. And so there's yet another opportunity where something was missed because they would have caught that during their refinement conversation. So it's not like, oh, we have this good conversation during product backlog refinement with the developers and the product owner. But once you get to the sprint planning, woohoo, all bets are off. No,
right.
No, it doesn't work that way.
It's just continuous. It's a build. It's not a,
Yeah. So that's the moral of the story of why there's no carryover in Scrum.
There's no medals for participation.